I'm not sure why memory works the way it does. I've forgotten the due dates of major essays, the punchlines to jokes I once loved, even at times the color of my own bedroom wall. But the memory of that morning at university, the very moment my hopes were strangled by polite committee voices, has sharpened with age instead of dulled. We crowded around a battered metal table in a room that smelled like disinfectant and the insistent, unsweet air of bureaucracy. I remember my hands, folded tightly in my lap, knuckles white and aching. Across from me, a half-circle of 3 professors. Dr. Mishra, with her neat clipboard, glancing at me over the rim of her glasses. Mr. Hickson, ancient and bored. And of course, Professor Walton, the dean, presiding like some Victorian magistrate. My voice sounded childish as I haltingly explained my proposal for my final year practical, an exploration of edible pastry sculptures, something whimsical meant to bridge art and taste, drawing inspiration from the likes of Cedric Grolet and, dare I say it, even Ansel Adams in edible forms. Their faces were carefully neutral, but I could sense the undercurrent already. When I finished, Professor Walton cleared his throat and set his pen down with a small, deliberate click. "Thank you, Aisha. I appreciate your enthusiasm," he said, as though accepting a cup of weak tea offered by a child. "However, our program is focused on developing traditional, market-ready skills. Your project seems more like a spectacle than a skill," Mr. Hickson broke in. His lips trembled around the word spectacle, as if I'd invited him to witness a circus. Dr. Mishra's eyes softened, but she shook her head too. "You're proposing something," she searched for a diplomatic word, "ambitious but impractical. You need to learn foundational skills, not chase, performance art. The time and ingredients alone would be wasteful." "I'm offering to pay for the ingredients." My voice was pitched higher than I'd liked. Walton cut me short, gentle but stern. "It's not about money, Aisha. It's not what our program prepares students for. I suggest adapting your proposal to something more in line with pastry classics, an entremet perhaps, or an advanced croquembouche." The meeting ground on another futile 10 minutes. When I finally stood to go, thanking them for their time, my cheeks burned with shame, not from the rejection itself, though that stung, but from the look I caught in Mr. Hickson's eyes, half disdain, half pity, as if I were a child who thought she could build a castle out of clouds. My family acted about the same way when I relayed the committee's decision that night at dinner. The sounds of onions frying filled the narrow kitchen, my mother clanging pans, and I could barely get the words out before my father harumphed. "You expect them to let you play around with cakes like some street fair performer? Did we send you to university for juggling eclairs?" My brother Riz snickered behind his phone. "Maybe she can make a cake that dances across the table." "Hush, Riz. Is this a joke?" Mum shot me a look, equal parts weary and scolding, as if the mere idea of pastry as art was another in a long series of my adolescent rebellions. "Your father's right. Learn something to get a job. We didn't immigrate for what? Playing with sugar?" Dinner was a battlefield I could never win. Afterwards, I lay awake, staring at the cracked paint above my bed. The sounds of London traffic blurring outside, fear biting into my chest. But somewhere below that fear, a dull, stubborn defiance began to simmer. If I couldn't follow my idea inside their walls, I'd learn outside them. Professional doors shut quickly, sometimes before you even knock. For 2 years after graduating with little ceremony, I took a series of jobs in kitchens that felt like prison sentences. Southall, Camden, even a stint in a glossy hotel in Knightsbridge. My colleagues joked about my fancy ideas. "Oi, Picasso, think you can paint us a tart that won't collapse? Let the art student do the piping, innit? Maybe we can flog it to an art show." Every suggestion for something new met the same cold wall. No one buys that here, or do as you're told. Shaped like dough, folded smaller with every refusal, I convinced myself that maybe, after all, I was ridiculous. The only time I felt my pulse quicken was late at night, alone in my flat, experimenting with leftover ingredients pilfered from work. I sculpted miniature towers from shoe, spun sugar into spider webs, and painted with orange reductions and chocolate. I'd eat my failures and photographed a few successes with trembling hands. One night, scrolling Instagram, I landed on an open call, the WhiskLondon New Talent Search. The description was short: creative pastry, open interpretation, all disciplines and ideas welcome. Submission deadline 2 weeks. I watched the cursor blink, taunting me in the entry form. The fear came again, that old acid in my throat. No one in their right mind tried things like this, not from my background. But the defiance won out. I worked every spare hour I had, hands getting raw with caramel burns and knife nicks. My concept, London Skylines, was a trio of edible sculptures: the gherkin in blood orange mousse with a sugar glass skin, Big Ben rendered in layered pistachio decoys and coffee cream, and the Shard, a precise spire of white chocolate shards held together with delicate isomalt windows. The night before the judging, I barely slept, the city humming below my flat's warped window. My mind cycled. This is too strange. This will fall apart. This is art, not food. You're being ridiculous, Aisha. The next morning, the city was cold and wet. I swaddled the desserts in a fortress of insulated coolers and packaging, my bus route mapped to avoid every bump. The WhiskLondon studio was a blur of nerves, contestants in monogrammed whites, presents of neat milfoils and classic entremets, while I hovered at the edge, balancing my fragile towers. I couldn't watch the initial judging, but I was called back that evening to meet the panel, Michel Roux Jr. No less, and pastry legend Rina Takahashi among others. "These are ambitious," Rina murmured, peering at the shard, running one elegant finger along the edge. Roux grinned. "London through the eyes of a pastry architect. They asked me nothing about employability or efficiency. Just questions that mattered. What inspired me? What challenges? Did the towers ever collapse? Yes, twice overnight. The air felt different in that room, electric with possibility." When they announced winners, I hardly believed it. My name, audience applause, a certificate, a check for £1,000, and, most precious, a mentorship invitation at Sugar and Sage, the renowned atelier. The next years felt like living on a carousel that never slowed. At Sugar and Sage, I was challenged hard. No coddling, no shortcuts, but for the first time, my wild pastry ideas weren't dismissed. We drafted blueprints for cakes, engineered solutions for balancing unwieldy sugar work, and eventually, I was encouraged to pitch my own artistic showcase for the studio's anniversary. My piece, a recreation of Waterloo Station in layers of passion fruit, hazelnut, and lemon marshmallow, went viral online and drew lines of customers around the block. Within months, I was fielding job offers, interview requests. I got headhunted by the Blue Room, an emerging patisserie in Marylebone, and within a year became its creative director. My name went up on the window in neat gold leaf. Aisha Hassan, head pastry chef. All that time, though, my mind drifted back to the old house in Southall, to Reese's laughter and my parents' worried stares. I'd tried, in halting ways, to bridge the gap. Posted them photos of my work, invited them to opening night parties. Their responses remained polite but unchanged. "Not sure we'd fit in there, beta. You must be very busy doing cakes." Then, At the height of the Blue Room's first Christmas, I found out we'd been picked for a BBC food documentary, Chefs Who Were Reshaping London's Taste. And to my heart's flip, our episode would feature a showcase event open to the public and media. A perfect chance for them to see in flesh and sugar the proof I'd fought for. I wrote to my family weeks in advance, tickets tucked into an envelope. "Please come," I wrote. "See what I do. Bring Riz and whoever you like." The day arrived, bright and icy, Oxford Street glittering with holiday lights. My stomach recoiled with every taxi horn, my heart tripping every time the door swung open. The bakery was transformed, Christmas carols playing, fairy lights strung up, and my team and I had spent the week constructing a winter's London, edible models of the city's landmarks, glazed in spun sugar snow. The centerpiece, a 4-foot tower bridge in poured sugar, pistachio marzipan, and gingerbread, stood gleaming on the central table. I was busy directing staff and greeting early arrivals when I spotted them, my parents, arm in arm, Dad in his good blazer and Mum in her practical shawl, blinking in the light. Riz lagged behind, eyeing the crowd with practiced nonchalance. My breath caught, all the childhood hurts and defiance knotted in my chest. I came over, nerves jangling. "You came," I managed. Mum gave me a small, nervous smile. "You said we should see. We're here." I took them around the display, pointing out the details, the sugar crystal frost edging Waterloo, the cinnamon-dusted embankments along our Thames, tiny buses and cabs shaped from marzipan. Strangers stopped to take photos. Staff offered up tastings, shards of glistening vanilla glass, tiny lemon tartlets from miniature phone boxes. Riz finally grinned, hoovering down a caramel shard. "Not bad, sis. Surprised it doesn't move." I smirked and handed him another tart. My parents lingered longest at the Tower Bridge centerpiece, Dad staring hard as if willing himself to understand. I saw then, across the bakery, the documentary crew beckoning guests to a small stage. They signaled me, the producers wanted a few words, then planned to film the family witnessing the display. The room's hum faded as I took the microphone. The warmth of the spotlights pressing against my scalp, my hands slightly trembling. I grew up close by, just a few miles, but it might as well have been another world, I began, searching the crowd for their faces. My dream always seemed unnecessary, unwise. I was told again and again that what I loved was too strange, too impractical, that art and food don't mix, that real jobs don't look like this. Gesturing to the glittering bridge, I caught Dad's eye. His jaw worked, as if processing the evidence. "But tonight, this." I gestured at the dazzling tableau,